Now you've just found the most unbiased reviewer when it comes to driving a WRX because I have never driven one. So this is the brand new 2023 WRX. It's a bit controversial because of its looks, but I'm here just to find out if it is an excellent car to buy in 2023 or are its competitors just a whole lot better? So to get into the WRX range, the starting price for the whole lineup is $44,990 before on-road costs. This here is the RS model, so it's the mid-range spec, but it is the highest spec car you can get with a manual. So this one here is priced from $50,490 before on-road costs. Now before you spend the extra money to get into the RS, the things that are included in the base model include 18-inch wheels, keyless entry and start, digital radio, the massive vertical 11.6 digital display in the center. You've also got dual zone climate controls, rain sensing wipers, and tire pressure monitoring systems. So why would you go ahead and spend the extra money on an RS? Spending the extra cash on this car will give you power seats with ultra suede, both for the driver and the passenger, and you also get heated seats for the front and the rear. You get rear USB charging ports. You've also got driver monitoring. You've also got a sunroof, included sat nav, and you also get a 10-speaker Harman Kardon sound system. And of course, if you spend the extra money, Subaru is going to give you a CD player because you need that in 2023. Now, it doesn't matter which model you buy because all WRXs come with all those iconic WRX features like that hood scoop. You've got very real quad exhausts out the back, but they could have sounded a little bit better from factory. And of course you get all-wheel drive as standard. What is standard as well is all this plastic you see around the exterior of the car. That's the biggest point of controversy because for some it doesn't look too good. And I sort of agree with that statement because I'm not too sure how this is going to age under that Australian UV. I just wish there was an option to match this to the paint of your car. But if there is a specification to get to make this plastic stand out a whole lot less, it would be this exact spec here. I think a dark color goes very well with this plastic here because you don't want this as a high contrast element because that's when it's going to really stand out. Now on the inside you have plenty of space in here for golf clubs, for several suitcases, but you are limited by the height of this boot entry here. But at least underneath the boot floor you are getting a spare tire. Now, this is a pretty practical back seat, and I think it's a lot nicer than that of the i30N sedan. I have plenty of headroom, except if I start to lean back a little bit, hit a bump, I might hit my head, but as a 5'11" adult, I can be relatively comfortable. This front passenger seat is also a little further back than it normally would be, but even still, I have okay amounts of knee room. I can put my feet underneath the seat. Now, this material in the back for the seats is very luxurious. I do think it's worth the upgrade, but I don't like the fake carbon fiber that runs along the doors here. And we also do have automatic rear windows. And it is worth noting that this middle seat is actually relatively comfortable. It has plenty of sponge in it, but it's not something you want to use for long trips. So when you put the center armrest down and you get additional cup holders in the middle, it makes for a good 4-person car. Now I have sat in a older generation WRX and I do notice that this interior is a whole lot nicer, but it's not as good as its competitors. As for build quality, it's mostly quite good. It is a little cheap with some of the materials, but for the price you can sort of excuse that. I do like the red stitching along the dashboard, and I also do like how the headrests have WRX stitched into them as well. Now these seats are nice and bolstered, they're very comfortable. Now you do have analog dials in front of you and there's a tiny digital display in the middle, but your whole cluster is not digital. But you do have a very large center screen here, which is okay. The UI is all right. It's very useful, and you're mainly going to use this for Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, which you go through these 2 USB ports up front to plug in. But you still get an auxiliary plug, which is quite useful, and you also do get a little 12-volt plug as well. Now this center screen will give you basic information about your car and maintenance, and you can even use it to remember your anniversary or birthdays, which is actually pretty important. Now I do like how this whole screen area is flanked by some actual physical buttons. So your volume knob, your tuner knob, your defroster buttons, and also your temperature controls are all physical buttons, which is all very useful. Now let's get on to the exciting stuff. First of all, the steering wheel. I really like the feel of it. It feels great in the hand, nice and chunky. They know what they're doing here. And I do like how WRX is spelled out down the bottom. But again, more of that fake carbon fiber, we don't like that. So I wish it was just blank or something else. And of course, this steering wheel is telescopic in adjustment as well, which is very useful. And finally, this car comes with 3 pedals, which all look quite nice in a little aluminium look. And you also do get your 6-speed manual transmission here in the center, and you do get a manual handbrake, which is exactly the setup you want to see in a WRX. Now here's something a bit different from the competitors. You have gas struts to access your engine, but let's hope that doesn't mean anything more than that. And nor should it, because on productreview.com.au, most owners have rated their car a 4 out of 5, which is pretty good. It means those owners have been more than happy with the reliability and ownership experience of the WRX over different generations. Here in its latest generation, we have a brand new motor, which is a 2.4 litre flat-4 turbocharged engine. Now Subaru have beefed up the CCs, and they've also beefed up the internals of this thing to handle any sort of extra power that's thrown at it. And if you don't throw more power at it, hopefully it means longer term reliability and no more blown head gaskets. Now it is worth noting in this review, as of filming, there have been some reported issues of some silicon seals. Let's hope those issues are either sorted out or are an anomaly for this motor. Now this car will cost you over 5 services, $2,433.06 in total under Subaru's cap price service program. And that means you'll have to visit them either every 12 months or every 15,000 kilometers. Now those servicing costs are a little bit higher, but you'd probably expect that with something of this nature in terms of performance, and also the fact this has an all-wheel drive drivetrain. Now at the time of filming, this car has not received a safety rating from ANCAP, so instead I went out looking and I saw the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety over in the US picked the brand new WRX as a top safety pick. And now structurally and the amount of airbags this car gets, this is a pretty safe car. But if you get the manual, you miss out on a lot of crucial safety tech. By opting for the superior transmission, you're only getting blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alerts and parking cameras. So there's no autonomous emergency braking with those eyesight cameras Subaru is so famous for, and there's no lane keep assist either. And so aside from the looks, that was the biggest letdown for this car when I learnt about it. But can the WRX redeem itself out on the roads? Now this WRX and the 2023 versions of this car are getting a 2.4 litre turbocharged flat-4 motor, which means this car joins the 200 kilowatt club, which means it's getting 204 kilowatts, which is 274 horsepower and 350 newton meters of torque. Now, if that doesn't sound like a whole lot more than the last generation, you'd be right. It's only an extra 5 kilowatts compared to the last generation, which is around 6 horsepower. Now we have all-wheel drive, we have a 6-speed manual, and we have no drive modes. So let's see how this car really performs. Now it's a bit hard to launch this car, but you can by just sort of using the handbrake, and in 3, 2, 1. That Redline does come up quite quick, which is yeah, a little bit annoying, but it's sort of similar to all the performance 4-cylinders we've seen out on the market today. Now, compared to the Hyundai i30 sedan, and I think this thing just feels a little bit more engaging to drive, possibly due to a sort of smaller chassis or maybe due to the all-wheel drive setup. But I was thinking what's similar to this car, and I did think that i30 sedan N was something similar for the price and performance. Now this 6-speed manual transmission is pretty good for the most part. I did find it to be a little bit tall in terms of the actual gear shifts, and it does feel a little bit sticky between shifts as well. And if you actually look at it, it's sort of angled towards the passenger a little bit, and I can't tell you really why the reason that would be. The 6-speed is alright once it's all warmed up, but it can feel a little plasticky when you're shifting between gears at low sort of temperatures. But I also really do like the all-wheel drive grip. It just means when you put power down, you're not slipping and sliding, which is very common in front-wheel drive cars for around this price point. Now, claim 0 to 100 in this car is 6 seconds, and that's quick, to be honest. You know, that's all the power you really need, and I kind of enjoy that because it means you can actually use this power and change through gears without really risking your license. But for some, that might be just a little too slow for the money, so they're probably already eyeing off some aftermarket parts if they're dedicated to buying this car. Or if you're cross-shopping, you're going to look at something like a Hyundai N product and go, why don't I just get that instead? It's a whole lot faster. Well, there's a good reason why you wouldn't go and buy an N product over this, but it's not going to be the brakes, that's for sure. When I go on the brakes, for example, let's go for an emergency stop in 3, 2, 1. Oh, this car stops up nicely, but there's just a hint of laziness in that pedal. I don't really feel a sense of urgency for a performance car where I like an aggressive bite. This sort of braking setup I expect in like a Forester or an Outback, but in the WRX, I just wish it was a bit more bitey on that first bit of engagement. Now, steering feel, I actually really think this car is quite responsive in the hand. You go through a corner and you're twitching the car and you really feel most of the car reacting to your inputs, which is pretty cool. But I do have to agree with some other reviewers and say, yes, this steering feel can feel a tiny bit numb. I don't really know exactly where my wheels are placed, unlike some more aggressive hot hatches, but yeah, that's something just to be aware of. Now, as for cornering, this is a very flat handling car, and I really love that. That boxer motor helps with bringing down that center of gravity, and it just feels so good to corner. I really like using this through the twisties that we've got out here. It's really quite fun, and then you shift down a couple of gears and you even can go closer to Redline and just have a bit of fun with it. This car is genuinely a lot of fun. Now, is this the best motor I've tested all year? No, but it is a big improvement over some other flat 4 engines I've reviewed that haven't been in a WRX. Yes, this is a great motor. I really think that this 2.4 feels nice and beefy, and it feels like, you know, it can handle a lot of my inputs without feeling like it's too strained. And I really do like the fact you get some extra displacement for 2023. Now, the suspension in here is pretty fine. It's just on the coils. There's no adaptive dampers here, which is a bit of a shame considering that you have to get the automatic to get that. That and the missing safety tech are the two biggest things that really irk me about this car if you want to drive the better transmission. A CVT is just not a transmission that should be used for performance cars. It's fine for economy cars and family cars, but in a performance car like this, you want to drop down a gear and move through gears rather than just one continuous variable transmission, which is just not a whole bunch of fun. Now, the other big thing is the sound. It's a bit of a love-hate relationship with this sound. I want a bit more exhaust sound. Everyone knows how good a boxer engine from Subaru can sound. It's very distinct, very unique, and I really quite like it, but you're not really getting it from the outside. If you put your window down, it's just a lot of wind sound, but what you do get is actually a bit of intake noise thanks to that big scoop on the bonnet, and you also do get a nice turbo whoosh between shifts, which is just so fun. So this car's very reminiscent of something like a Toyota GR Yaris, nowhere near as darty or, to be honest, as refined as that car, but you do have that sensation here in a slightly bigger and different package. And of course, fuel economy is always important to know. So I've been averaging, with some enthusiastic driving, 11.9 litres per 100 Ks. So that's decent. That's what I'd expect for a larger displacement flat 4 like this, but that's not what this car's about. It's all about being able to go through your own gears and have so much fun. I just... Now, I do appreciate that rev limiter. It doesn't bounce off a limiter. It's got like a bit of another limiter before you actually hit a hard limiter, and it's actually a good way to preserve the motor, especially if you miss that 6,000 RPM cutoff, which it's strict on. So you go from about 5,000, then 6,000 is your red line. So it has got quite a low red line, which kind of sucks. But if that means you get a fun turbocharged motor, then look, it's something you'll have to work around. But it would have been nicer to see a slightly higher red line to really ride out that power curve. And that turbo whoosh sound, like, so good. I've never driven a WRX before, and it's just exactly how I'd pictured driving a WRX, although missing a bit of soundtrack from those quad pipes. Now, to put it into perspective, this car is only 1.4 seconds faster than my 2011 Abarth. So you're not going to buy this because it's the fastest car you can buy for the money. Instead, you're looking at an antidote to the hot hatch invasion this country has a problem with. So you're looking at an all-wheel drive sedan that is very true to the WRX formula. And no, I would not agree it is a shell of its former self. If anything, we should be grateful that something like this is still being produced with the 6-speed transmission, where someone like Mitsubishi have stopped doing that a long time ago. Now, the looks might be controversial, but yes, this is still a very true WRX. Now, make sure to tell us what it's like to own your car over on productreview.com.au, because your reviews do matter and they let other people know if it's worth buying your car. Now, thank you so much for watching. My name's Cameron, and I'll see you in the next one.